world is speeding up, and Sri Lanka is progressing with it. Succeeding in this time requires innovative strategies and a performance-driven mindset. For over 35 years, First Capital has put performance first in everything we do. We have optimized every aspect of our operation to deliver the highest performance and results to our stakeholders. As we march into the future, we are committing to elevating our services even further, moving forward with what we believe in to provide you with a premium service, delivering on our promises, finding the best solutions for our clients, going above and beyond to deliver value, and upholding the highest levels of professionalism. Rest assured, every step of the way, we will deliver performance first in everything we do. First Capital, performance first, always.
Good afternoon, everyone. A very, very warm welcome. It's good to have you with us here. To those of you who are joining us via Facebook and Zoom, thank you very much for being here. At the outset, we'd like to say a very special note of thanks to the Chairman and the Board of Directors of First Capital Treasuries PLC and First Capital Group, along with the management team who are present here at the IPO launch. Thank you very much for being a part of today. Before we begin, there are a couple of very basic house rules for those joining in. If you wish to ask a question, if you're joining via Zoom, then please use the Q&A option. We know generally we are quite accustomed to using the chat box, but today we will be using the Q&A section. So please do leave your questions, your queries in the Q&A session as opposed to the chat box. So it'll be easier for us to ask those questions later on. And of course, if you're joining via Facebook, you can leave your questions as a comment in the comment section. Do remember that if we have similar questions, we will try to club them together. So your question might be amalgamated or kind of merged with another question a little later on. The format of this evening's proceedings, I'd just like to run you through it. The first half is dedicated to taking you through the historical journey, an overview of the primary dealer industry, also financials and valuation. And thereafter, we will move into our Q&A portion. So we'd love for you to interact during these proceedings, to ask the questions that you have by posting your questions, by commenting, and we will certainly go into that portion a little later on in today's proceedings. So thank you very much for being here. And we now move on to the main portion of our event. And to do this, I would like to introduce to you a very eminent panel for the IPO launch. We have with us today, representing the Board of Directors, we have Mr. Nishan Fernando, Chairman, First Capital Treasuries and First Capital Group. Mr. Dinesh Shafter, Managing Director, First Capital Treasuries, First Capital Group. Mr. Dilshan Veerasekara, Director and Chief Executive Officer. We have with us Mr. Ramesh Shafter, Director, First Capital Treasuries and First Capital Group. Mr. Shafter is also the Managing Director and Group Chief Executive Officer of the First Capital's ultimate parent entity, Janashakti Limited. Also representing the management team today, we have Mr. Taru Shekanayaka, Chief Operating Officer. We have Mr. Mangala Jayashanta, Chief Financial Officer. And we have Mr. Angelo Simmons, Chief Dealer, First Capital Treasuries PLC. Thank you very much for being a part of today. We're looking forward to hearing from you. It is with a great deal of pride that First Capital announces the opening of the initial public offering of First Capital Treasuries PLC. And today is indeed a very momentous and important day. So in this momentous occasion of the 40-year journey of First Capital Treasuries PLC, a subsidiary of First Capital Holdings PLC and a member of Janashakti Group that has played a critical part in the nation's economy. And we are very honored to be able to share today with all of you who are also joining us online. At this point in time, I would like to call upon the group chairman, Mr. Nishan Fernando, to share his opening remarks with us. Mr. Fernando.
Thank you. And thank you and good afternoon to all of you. Members of the head table, distinguished invitees, those who are joining online, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great pleasure and privilege to say a few words as introductory remarks at another performance first of the First Capital Group, that is the launch of the IPO of First Capital Treasuries Limited. Today, due to the restrictions that we have arising from COVID pandemic, most of the invitees are joining online via Zoom platform and other online platforms. We will have our board members and the research team. We have our head of research in the audience physically, and others are joining online, and also analysts, the group staff members, the media, and representatives of stockbrokering companies and other invitees. So it is my pleasure to welcome you all to this momentous occasion of launching the IPO of First Capital Treasuries PLC, First Capital Treasuries Limited. First Capital Treasuries was incorporated in 1982 and has a long history of 40 years. Initially, it was incorporated as a money brokering company, and then it was established as a primary dealer in 1992. It was the first non-bank standalone primary dealer to be established in Sri Lanka, and also it listed its debentures and became a listed entity in 2015. And now, with the backing of an A rating from ICRA, we are now going for this IPO in 2021 as another step forward in our performance first culture and strategy. First Capital Treasuries has played a pivotal role in the financial sector, having almost contributed to 18% of the market in raising debt for the government. As a trusted and stable entity, we work as a team to always deliver great outcomes to all our stakeholders, and we are now moving into the future with this IPO, opening the doors for the general public to be part of our stakeholders. First Capital Treasuries is looking to list its shares in the Colombo Stock Exchange Diri Savi Board, and 7.6 million shares at a price of 39 rupees per share, which works out to a 300 million offer for sale, is being launched today. And the holding company of First Capital Treasuries will be divesting 5% of its holding, and this offer is being made as an offer for sale. So at First Capital Treasuries, as the chairman, I would invite you to subscribe to this IPO, and as an independent chairman and director, I could say that First Capital is a group where governance is maintained at the highest possible level. We have all governance requirements complied with the independent directors and non-executive directors in place, with all board statutory committees, audit committee, remuneration committee, risk management committee, investment committee. All these committees are in place, and decisions are always collective, and the risk is minimized. And I think we have one of the best research heads with the company, who provides a lot of input into our decision making. So with all these support and the contribution, I am sure First Capital Treasuries, together with First Capital Holdings, the parent company, and with the blessings of Janashakti PLC, which is the ultimate parent company, all stakeholders could look forward to a mutually beneficial investment with First Capital Treasuries IPO. So with those little words, I would once again welcome all of you who are present here, as well as those who are joining via electronic platforms. And I wish that this launch would be a great success. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fernando, for your opening remarks. Next, we have with us the Group Director and CEO, Mr. Dilshan Veerasekara, who will take us through the highlights of the IPO, share with us the background and the journey of First Capital Treasuries PLC, and about the First Capital Group, of course, and give us an overview of the primary dealer industry, and also share with you the financial highlights, valuations, and its findings. So we're very excited to hear about this. Mr. Veerasekara.
Thank you very much, Chairman, members of the board, distinguished invitees, my colleagues, and most importantly, the investing public who are present here, I believe, on various social media and online platforms. A very warm welcome to you and a very good afternoon. I'm going to take you through a presentation that will probably run a couple of minutes, maybe 15, 20, that will illustrate the performance of the company, the journey so far, the market, our position in the market, and our future expectations. I believe it's a great opportunity that the public is getting to subscribe for this IPO, and we are very confident of heavy subscription for it, a successful subscription for it, as well as upside on the share as well. So let me take you through the presentation now. So at a snapshot, if you look at it based on last financial year, that is 31st of March 2021, we had total assets just under 26 billion. We had a profit after tax, which is a historical high number for the company of 1.84 profit after tax, net trading income of over 3 billion. We are the highest rated primary deal out there currently. We have an A rating that is stable. We've just got that rating reaffirmed even for the current financial year. And our group capital position stood at 4.5 billion for 31st of March. We've delivered a close to 30% ROE over the last 5 years. Just an update on the latest financials to ensure full disclosure. The last quarter of this financial year, that is the June to September quarter, did result in a small loss for the company. So we, to be transparent with all our investors, sort of updated these numbers so that you're aware. The prospectus and the valuation was done based on 30th June numbers, but we are giving you the 30th September latest position so that all of you could be aware of the current position. So the total assets have declined with the interest rates rising. We've sort of reduced the portfolio exposure, and our capital position is slightly down to 4.1 billion, but still nevertheless the highest in the industry. If you look at our journey so far, I think like our chairman mentioned, it's almost 40 years now that the company has been around. Initially was incorporated in 1982 as a money broking firm, and thereafter in 1992 was the first licensee that central bank appointed as a primary dealer in 1992. At that time there was no one else. In 2000, central bank sort of formalized the primary dealer market, appointing 8 PDs or licensing 8 institutions as PDs. And again, we were reaffirmed, obviously, as one of those 8. In 2001, First Capital was actually the first PD to subscribe to a dollar-denominated issue that the government made. And since then, we've been actively participating in raising foreign currency debt for the government, in addition to what normally the PDs are used to doing, which is the rupee financing. So you have treasury bills and treasury bonds. But First Capital also has been one of the more active participants in raising dollar-denominated debt for the government through the SLDBs. In 2007, we became part of the Dunamis group that included our sister company, PLC in real estate. And in 2010, we surpassed the tier 1 capital base of 1 billion and becoming the first standalone PD to actually cross that 1 billion mark. We got our first rating in 2014, where ICRA gave us an A- rating. That was about 6-7 years ago. And thereafter, in 2015, we did our first listed debt issue to raise subordinated debt, and thereby being the first, technically the first listed primary deal on the exchange. However, we were listed by virtue of debt and not equity. What we are doing now is offering equity for the general public. However, the listing rules are identical for a company whether you're listed on debt or equity, and we've been compliant and having the governance standards of a listed company since way back in 2015. We formally became part of the Janashakti group in 2018 when Dunamis Capital merged with currently the ultimate parent of First Capital, Janashakti Limited, and formally came together as part of a big group. And now that group includes Janashakti Life into life insurance, Orient Finance as a licensed finance company in the NBFI space, and Kelsey Homes engaged in real estate. So we are part of a larger group of companies, and that obviously gives a lot of synergies that can be utilized and leveraged upon at First Capital Treasuries. In 2020, again, we had some milestones. We recorded the first 1 billion profit after tax. We issued our second listed debenture, and we did a 750 million as subordinated debt, which is still outstanding, as well as we got upgraded by ICRA, which is the Moody's subsidiary operating in Sri Lanka, to an A-rated entity. And like I said, we've just got reaffirmed in 2021 of a rating of A. The pandemic having hit the financial services and the economy in general, so a lot of businesses changed the way they operate. And First Capital has been sort of no different, and we've evolved with the times. A big thing that we saw happen in 2020 or the latter part of 2020 and get extended in 2021 for the PDs was the digital onboarding. The fact that the regulator, both the central bank and the SEC, allows these institutes to digitally onboard clients. So there is no face-to-face interaction that's required. We've leveraged on that. We were the first PD to launch it. And currently we are able to onboard clients via a smart device without a face-to-face interaction, having being integrated into the Department of Registrar of Persons, the DRP, and thereby being able to do the eKYC and anti-money laundering requirements digitally. And we see that as a big game changer in the landscape of being able to now onboard clients from any part of Sri Lanka without having physical presence. So that's the sort of journey we've seen so far. If we look at the highlights of the issue, it is a small issue. So we are offering 7,695,000 shares at 39 rupees each, which constitutes a 300 million offer for sale. The NAV when we did our valuation was 29 rupees at 1.3 times book value, and is essentially a 5% equity stake. We currently have the Employees Trust Fund already as a shareholder holding another 5.5%. So we'll have a 10% plus public float and thereby get listed on the Diri Savi Board. Just for disclosure, we've again updated our financials for September. So you would see these numbers slightly getting updated. Where the net asset is now slightly below 27 and the price to book has gone up to 1.4 times. Yeah, just to give you an understanding of First Capital as a group, First Capital Holdings is already listed. Goes under the ticker CFVF. I'm sure you're familiar with. And there's an intermediary holding company, First Capital Limited, which is unlisted, that owns the operating subsidiaries. So this is the first subsidiary that's getting listed, First Capital Treasuries. It is 100% government securities business. We've consciously decided to just have our balance sheet purely in GSEC. So it's essentially a risk-free balance sheet in terms of credit risk. However, it is exposed to market risk, interest rate and liquidity. And currently First Capital Limited owns 94% or 94.4% of the treasuries operation. However, we are divesting the 5%, so our ownership will then come down to 89.4%. So that's essentially the structure. Our sister companies in the First Capital Group are engaged in asset management, again, an investment manager and unit trust manager licensed by SEC. First Capital Markets, which we do the corporate debt operations with, formerly where we did margin trading as well. We've since given up our margin trading operation. First Capital Equities, which is a full member of the Colombo Stock Exchange, and is a stock broker dealing in equities and listed debt. And First Capital Trustee Services, which engages in the trustee operations. So a full service investment banking operations that we undertake under First Capital, and Treasuries essentially takes care of the government securities part of that. So why consider First Capital Treasuries IPO? Why would you want to invest? So just a few points, I think. I mean, if you look at the company, we've had a sort of an illustrious history. Over 30 years of operating in it. We are the oldest PD. We've done this for the longest time. We believe that we know markets better than a lot of others, that we understand fixed income. And the volatile environment that Sri Lankan markets are exposed to. I think all of you would know that if you look at interest rates, they're pretty volatile in Sri Lanka, and it's fairly cyclical in nature. Currently, we are in a tightening cycle where we are seeing interest rates sort of move up. And we believe that we have the know-how, the experience, the research from within that will help us sort of navigate those volatile periods and benefit out of it. So that's really the key reason. If you look at our capital base, we are the highest capitalized PD, over 4 billion in tier 1 capital. The current regulatory requirement by central bank still stands at 1 billion, which increases on the 1st of January of 2022 to 2 billion, and thereafter increases on the 1st of January 2023, which is about a year away, to 2.5 billion. So we are already at 4 billion. So we are very well complied with that requirement. We are well above that requirement, and that obviously will help us sustain the performance, be able to leverage higher, but also I think navigate through difficult periods and even maybe weather certain storms that we may face. We've obviously built up a very strong client base across over the years. So we have clients, not just corporates and institutional, but also the high net worth and the retail. Having the different elements of asset management, equities, the entire investment banking offering also complements this, as well as being part of a larger group of the Janashakti group also helps us, and will obviously have a lot of cross-selling referrals that come through from the other businesses. So that's a big reason why you should consider. Like I mentioned, we are well above the central bank requirement in terms of the capital. And if you look at the dividend payout ratio, we've averaged over 50% over the last 10 years. So I don't think you'll really find a counter that has declared dividends as much as we have. And that's one very strong reason you as investors should consider this issue. In terms of ROE, for the last 5 years, our ROE is close upon 30%. And like I said, we are again the highest rated PD at an A rating. That denotes how stable we are, and that's coming from an independent rating agency. And last but not least, I think we have one of the best boards in terms of listed entities and in terms of corporate governance, as well as the diverse backgrounds that these members of our board bring to the table. Is certainly an advantage, and I think would benefit the company and in turn then benefit our shareholders as well. So quick snapshot of the issue. Like I said, we are offering a 5%, 7,695,000 shares, and it's offer for sale, which the principal shareholders, First Capital, will be divesting that amount of shares. And we'll end up with about a 10.5% public float. With the Employees Trust Fund Board who've been a long-standing investor. They've been a shareholder since the 15th of September 1999, so over 20 years. And I can I know that they're very happy with their investment that they made 20 years ago. And I believe that they would be looking at continuing with that investment into the future. So a couple of key facts, figures, again illustrating our strength. So I think, we are the oldest PD, we've been around, we know the markets. But also I think something internal that is the structure that we operate within. So you have the board obviously on top. You have board delegated committees like our investment committee that sort of drives the business decisions or the trading positions that First Capital Treasuries undertakes. You have the ERMC, which is the Enterprise Risk Management Committee that overlooks the risk aspects. And you have obviously the Board Audit Review Committee that looks at the compliance aspects, audit aspects, and the related party review committee. So the governance structure, I think, is one of the best. We are already operating as per listed company. And it's nothing new. So I think the listing alone doesn't mean we're going to change our standards. We've been maintaining these standards since way back in 2015 when, like I said, we were listed by virtue of debt. We've continuously delivered steady performance. So I think what matters is to look at historically what this company has done. And like I said, almost 30%, 29% ROE over the last 5 years with a 50% dividend payout ratio, I think is unparalleled, is unmatched from a listed company perspective. So you can expect the same going forward. The fact that we are already very well capitalized over and above the requirement would mean that there is no real need for retention of further capital profits in the business. So you could definitely expect us to maintain similar payout ratios than that we've maintained in the past. And like I said, I mean, with Moody's subsidiary ICRA telling you it's A-rated, there are not too many companies that have maintained A ratings and actually got upgraded during the pandemic. We got upgraded in 2020 from A- to A, which proves the resilience and the performance of First Capital. If you sort of look at in terms of the future, what it holds for us, I think, we are very confident that we can replicate the performance we've had in the past. We are one of the most active primary dealers out there. We've been making markets for a long time. And I think that's an important facet of being a PD, not just to subscribe for auctions, not just to take up your part in primary issues, but also to create a secondary market, an active secondary market that enables people to trade, increases liquidity of government securities, and increase the opportunity for people to enter and exit of this asset class. So I think we've played our part in that. And today, the government securities is the largest market out there. It is currently about a 9.5 trillion rupee market. Just to give you some context, the Colombo Stock Exchange's market capitalization is about a 4.9 trillion, little under 5 trillion. So it's almost double that amount in terms of government securities. And if you look at, and probably all of you know, the government is looking to move away from foreign borrowings or international sovereign bonds and looking at financing its requirement more from domestic sources. So you will see this market grow. This market growing means that First Capital also will benefit out of it. And we feel that there is a huge potential to take this out to the public as an asset class that I believe is underutilized even currently today. And we can play our part in doing that. And I think all our shareholders will benefit out of that. Like I said, we've also seen this whole digital transformation happening in all financial services, not just the PD environment. We've seen that happen in banking, in the BFI space. and we've tagged along. So like I said, today PDs can onboard a client from any part of Sri Lanka, actually any part of the world, if the documentation requirements are met. Which means we don't really need branch presence. We don't need on-ground presence to do that. We've also seen the fact that I think a lot of people don't realize the asset class government securities probably over the last 40 years has been the best performing. The 5-year bond is the best performing asset class, I think, over that 40 or 30-year period. It will probably continue to be the case into the future. And I mean, even if you look at it in current context, a lot of people don't realize it. The 1-year T-bill is at over 8% and the 5-year bond is trading at close to 11. You can't get those rates from a bank or an NBFI on a deposit. This creates a large opportunity. And I think a lot of the investing public, a lot of the general population don't know this. Now the digital transformation gives us the opportunity to take this out. And that is what First Capital will do. So we will definitely leverage on that to take this product out there, thereby fulfilling our requirement to source the borrowing requirements of the government, but also to make the asset class popular and more liquid. And obviously, not just for the clients to benefit, obviously the company will also profit out of that. You've heard us come out with, probably those watching First Capital knows our new sort of ethos is performance first. Our tagline is performance first. Everything revolves around this slogan for us, and it's something that we truly believe that we have to live, the performance first value, and that is really going to drive all our businesses, including treasuries. So I think in everything we do, we look at performance first, you know, really coming out there. We will be pushing that in treasuries as well, and that's also a reason that I think will propel future growth. We are also looking at certain digital and system regulatory changes that will come. One key aspect of that is the central counterparty settlement system, or the CCP, that central bank is going to start next year. I think the project itself probably would take about 18 months to 2 years to complete, but then we would have a infrastructure for government securities that is world class. The CCP would mean that you don't have any settlement risk with your counterparts, and the settlement and the security seamlessly flow through, and there's a central counterparty in the middle who ensures settlement, and that's going to further boost the government securities market. So that's also a key reason that we are very optimistic of what the future looks like because of the CCP that will definitely broad base the government securities market in Sri Lanka. Just a few snapshots of what I've said so that you can see the numbers in the graphical form. As you can see, you know, our 10-year average EPS is, you know, just under 4 rupees. You can see how our profits have evolved. Like I said, our dividend payout ratio is 50%. Just sometimes our earnings are cyclical. So you can have great years, you can have average years, then you can have not so good years. But I think on average, you wouldn't find a company that has a 50% dividend payout over 10 years. Like I said, return on equity also is close towards the 30% mark. And if you look at our debt to equity, you can see that's more a function of our view on rates and what we think will happen. So you can see we've sort of reduced leverage down with the interest rates moving up. In terms of the industry, we have currently 10 players operating in this industry. 5 of them are banks. So you have People's Bank, Sampath, Ceylon, Bank of Ceylon, and Commercial being the bank appointed PDs. And you have 5 standalone PDs, which we belong to. First Capital, CalMSB, Trust and Equity. And out of the non-bank PDs, we are the largest, both in terms of the capital, the asset base, the profitability, and the transactional volumes generated, both primary and secondary. And I think, like Chairman mentioned in his speech, if you take just 2020 into account, we took up 18% of the total bonds issued by the government of Sri Lanka. So that's almost 1/5 of the total primary issuances, which is a very, very large part. We're also quite active in the secondary market. And like I said, we are a market maker who sort of sets prices on how these government securities trade. Another thing to note here is 3 years ago, this space was 15 primary dealers. And you probably, all of you are aware, there have been some controversies around the PDs, and we've seen that 15 number drop to 10. We've also seen the market grow at probably about a 15% per annum. So you've had over that 5 years, the market almost doubling in terms of issuances, and the number of participants or PDs reducing by 50%. So there again, while that means there is a larger responsibility on the 10, I think it also means a greater opportunity to make larger profits. That's how we at First Capital see it, and we will continue to try to grow our market share from where it is currently. Just quickly a peer review that we've done with the standalone PDs on return on equity, net income margins, revenue, and the debt to equity ratio. So I won't dwell too long on this, but as you can see, on ROE and revenue, as well as on the gearing times, we are a little ahead of our competition. And on the valuations, so we've done a independent valuation that Ernst & Young has done for us. Like I said, it was based on our 30th June numbers, but for full disclosure, we've updated that for the 30th September numbers. The primary method of valuation was a justified price to book method. So the highest weightage was given then. As you can see, the valuation range was around 45.90 to 48.40. We also did secondary method of justified PE and a dividend discount model basis also. And E&Y had sort of taken all three of those, with the justified price to book being the primary method, and weighted and come out at a valuation range of 46 to 48 rupees. And that means that there is a potential upside of 15 to 19% for the investors at the 39 rupees. And on if you look at the PE multiples, even if you take the 3-year average earnings multiple of 5.7 times, I think investors who are familiar would know that this sort of very well priced and is priced at a discount. If you look at the all share price index today, I believe it's trading at about a 13 plus price earnings multiple on the exchange. So this is definitely coming out at a significant discount. Again, just a table to illustrate how we performed over the last 5 years. So again, I just want to highlight now, if you look at income as well as equity, we've grown our equity base also from a 1.6 billion of equity in 16-17. We've gone up to over 4 billion currently. And like I said, we are very well compliant with central bank requirements. We are well above that, which would mean that we have the muscle to really take large positions, weather the storm of rates climbing and maybe taking mark-to-market hits on. But also, I think that there is no real requirement for retention of profit in the company on a large basis. So you could expect a significantly higher dividend payout because the company doesn't really need new capital. That's one reason why we decided for a offer for sale as opposed to IPO and issuing new shares, because the company really didn't have a requirement for capital. Quick update on our financials. So September, we did realize a loss and thereby we recorded a slight loss, but we've also cut our portfolio significantly. And we believe that we've stemmed that loss at that point, and you would see us probably turn around thereafter. A key strength I think we said at the beginning was the profile of directors that we have at First Capital, and I just want to share that with you also. So as you can see, our chairman is the independent chairman, and 50% of our board is comprised of independent directors. So namely Nishan Fernando, Nishan Dimel, Chandra De Silva, Minette are all non-executive independent directors. We only have 2 executive directors, that is our managing director and myself. And you can't expect a better profile of to be represented on the board, which I think really ensures the corporate governance standards and the independence in our decision making, which is something I think which is much stronger than our competition out there. So that's basically it on the investor presentation. Thank you very much for listening to me, and we look forward to taking your questions and answering them at the panel discussion that will follow after this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Veerasekara, for your presentation and for assuring those looking to invest. And that brings to the conclusion our presentation part of this evening, which means we're moving on now to our Q&A portion. To those joining us via FB, just leave your questions in the comment section. And for those joining us via Zoom, please use the Q&A section. Like I said at the outset of today, we're usually used to using the chat box, but we're asking you to use the Q&A section. And we do have some questions that have already come in. We will get into those in just a bit. I believe we can move into a first question. Mr. Veerasekara, perhaps you could answer this. And of course, we'd like to ask our panelists to feel free to join in and add on to anything that that is presented today. So the first question we have is, what prompted First Capital Treasuries PLC to go in for an IPO to start with?
So I think it was more to do with broad-basing the ownership, giving an opportunity to the investing public to be a part of the First Capital story, to be a part of performance. First, we were also keen to increase liquidity on our shares. So that's one reason also that we looked at. And even though we've already listed by virtue of debt, we felt that on an ongoing basis to have the required corporate governance standards, that it'll be useful to be listed. One final point is that last year's budget also did give a tax incentive to get listed. And we will obviously make use of that incentive through this process as well.
Thank you. We have quite a few comments and questions in the chat box, but I will ask you one more question and then move into some of the comments that are there also. Mr. Veerasekara, perhaps you want to answer this, or we can pass it on to someone else. Given the current economic environment, both globally and locally, what is the value and benefit of investing in government securities?
So, I mean, it's the only risk-free asset class you have in Sri Lanka. Government securities are perceived risk-free. The government is your counterpart there. They would never default or have the ability to essentially reissue securities. So the default wouldn't happen. So technically an environment that has certain uncertainties like what you see today, the pandemic, you're not sure of your counterparts, you're not sure of financial institute stability. This is the safest asset class that you can invest in. So like I said, First Capital Treasuries is maintaining 100% government securities portfolio. We've not diluted our balance sheet, and the assets that we hold under that entity is only government securities. So that obviously means that government securities as asset class is a good asset class you won't lose your money on. Like I said, yields are much higher than even some of the other conventional deposits that a lot of people don't know. And the fact that Treasuries then deals in that would allow a potential shareholder also to sort of get the spillover benefits of us, of the entity or the profitability of the entity. And that's why they should look at the asset class as well as the entity FCD.
Thank you for that very clear answer. More questions. In your opinion, does the short-term financial performances of the company have an impact on the IPO itself?
From my point of view, no. But I guess all investors may have their own opinions. So I think First Capital Treasuries, like I said, the business we are in is very cyclical in nature. The PDs, the primary dealers, make money on a decline of interest rates. That's when the business really can leverage and make large profits. In a rising interest rate environment, it's very difficult to sort of make gains. It's more about managing risk. However, I think investors need to take a medium to long-term view. So we are not saying that, this is a short-term punt by any means. We are saying this is a company that has long-term value in it. So if you look at our 5-year, 10-year historical performance, you would see why it's so important to maybe hold on to that share. So I would really encourage investors to look at a more medium to long-term perspective than a short-term nature, because earnings can be a bit volatile in our business.
There's a question that's come in via the chat box from Erdly Kern, who says your 5-year ROE average is very impressive. Do you anticipate this trend to continue?
We certainly hope so.
More questions, Mr. Veerasekara. What are the long-term growth plans of FCT?
Yeah, so like I said, I think we see an opportunity to really broad base, expand, take government securities to the masses via these digital means that have been enabled by the regulator. So therefore, we don't really need branches. We don't really need foot soldiers on the ground. We can do that. So I think by promoting government securities, making the public aware that, look, this is the least riskier fixed income product out there, yielding you the highest return, I can't see why someone would say no to it. So I think taking that message out is what we intend doing in the future. And that's where we see growth coming from for us.
I know you had almost answered this in your presentation, but I'm going to add on a question and ask you, what do you do differently and better than others in the industry?
Yeah, so I think the fact that fixed income is our bread and butter, right? So we have, apart from the primary dealership, we have fixed income of corporate debt on the debt structuring and trading side. We have unit trusts and fund management. So fixed income has always been our bread and butter, and we invest heavily in research for that. I've not seen any other company out there that does a fixed income research report. We sort of balance our research between equity, so macro, equity, and fixed income. Fixed income plays a large part. So I think our experience, our knowledge, our research capabilities, and the level of input we get from our board, who also, I think, understand the macroeconomic environment, understand the risk, understand the products, is what gives us the edge. So I think we have that over a lot of our competition that probably don't have that capability. And that's why it's important to maybe subscribe for this issue and be a part of us.
I'm going to continue to ask you a couple more questions because there seem to be quite a few. And I know we are still okay for time. So a couple more questions. This question is from Hariyasharana Singha. We saw interest rates coming down in October 2021. Based on that, do you expect better performance and have a positive profit figure for December quarter?
Yeah, so I think definitely we will probably have a better performance because the July-September quarter was when we had government security rates climb by, I think, almost 400 basis points. We had a monetary policy hike, an SRR hike that impacted our earnings for that quarter. I think we will definitely see a better performance in the next quarter, which is the October-December quarter. In terms of the first part of that question, yes, yields have sort of eased off somewhat, but that's more to do with I think, temporary demand supply trading activity, not so much in terms of directional change. For us, we still believe that there may be further upside in interest rates. So we will navigate that volatility very carefully.
One last question to you. What does higher yields in the government securities market actually say about Sri Lanka's macroeconomic picture? I know that's a bit of a larger, more broad-based general question, but just to answer some of the questions that we have coming in online. Many more. I don't know if we have the time to go in for all of this. So I think this might be the last question we might be able to pose to you.
So I mean, I think it's a function of monetary policy, it's a function of inflation, it's a function of the macroeconomic stability of the country. So central bank has started tightening rates, right? So a reason for high interest rates definitely is the monetary policy direction that we've seen, and that's something that's happening world over. If you look at all central banks, they have started sort of tightening monetary policy. We've had a long period of loose policy, printing of money by a lot of central banks, and now there's somewhat of a pause and maybe a reversal towards that. So I think that's to do with the macroeconomic environment. Now, what that says about Sri Lanka is, to me, really is that at least we are doing something that we are looking at these indicators and doing what we think we should. Higher or lower interest rates don't necessarily mean good or bad. I think finding that right corridor is important. So the central bank, if you look at its policy direction, is looking at containing inflation, and the increase for the rates is partly because to address inflationary concerns. We've seen inflation climb above 8%. The government's original target is 4 to 6. Now they've said that 8, so it's out of the target, but it's transitionary. So they've taken some action to increase rates. We feel that there may be more pressure for rates to go up further. Again, I think for us really is volatility is opportunity. So making use of that opportunity is what we do best. And as long as we can be on the right side and trade and make gains, obviously you see those results coming to FCT and trickling down to the shareholders as well.
Thank you very much for taking the time to answer those questions. We do have many more, but again, in the interest of time, we're going to have to only pose those questions, but perhaps those who have asked questions can get in touch with those from the team, and perhaps it may give you a little bit more clarity. I think for those that are in particular very specific, asking very specific questions. I'd now like to invite representing the managers to the issue, Mr. Tharu Shekanayaka, to speak a few words and to share closing remarks for today.
We are indeed very excited and encouraged by the interest and enthusiasm voiced, as evident by your pointed and interesting questions. I hope that today's dialogue will generate even more interest and momentum leading to 6th of December when we go public. An IPO being one of the most meaningful steps in the life cycle of a company, part of First Capital Treasuries' strategic efforts to broaden its ownership base, bringing in more liquidity and strengthen its brand identity, while also enabling the company to return to the market for funding at any given time. Our teams at First Capital, corporate finance, dealing room, asset management team, or stockbrokers are fully geared to respond to any additional queries you may have subsequently had, and assist you with all the matters arising on the IPO application process. As we invite the public to unlock this valuable opportunity, what you need to information-wise, the prospectus and other IPO documents can be downloaded from our website. Interested applicants can apply directly through the CSC mobile app application by visiting the IPO section and filling the application form and submitting the same. The issue opens on 6th of December, and we are hopeful of we can close on the same day, and the refunds will be made within 8 market days. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ekanaika, for sharing those details. At First Capital, across all our product offerings, we have always believed in delivering performance primarily to our stakeholders. With the First Capital Treasuries IPO, the intention is absolutely the same. It is to deliver performance first to all the stakeholders and to share that success going forward with them. We'd like to invite the public to unlock this very valuable opportunity to read the prospectus on the corporate website, firstcapital.lk, or on www.csc.lk. We'd like to invite all of you, as Mr. Ekanaika said, to join us on the 6th of December on the journey forward. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for being a part of today, and we wish you a very successful investment journey. Thank you.